Two neighbors bought the exact same car from the exact same dealership on the same week in 2023. Same model, same trim, same color. One of them paid $2,400 more than the other. The one who paid more was the one who brought cash. That result should not be possible. Cash means no risk to the dealer, no financing to arrange, no default to worry about. By every conventional measure, the cash buyer should have had the most leverage in that room. He did not. So what does the dealer actually value more than cash? That question has a specific answer, and it changes how the entire negotiation works. The business model of a modern car dealership is built around one hidden mechanism. The price of the car is not where the money is made. Once you understand where the real profit comes from, you will walk into any dealership knowing exactly what they need from you and how to use that to your advantage. My name is Alex, and if you have ever felt like you negotiated hard and still left a dealership wondering whether you actually won, stay with this video, because the sticker price and the invoice price are both designed to distract you from the number that actually matters. And I'm going to show you how the dealer's profit system really works and the exact sequence to use it against them. Once you understand this, you will stop negotiating the price and start negotiating the deal, which is a completely different thing. It all starts with a number you have probably used as your reference point, a number the industry invented specifically for buyers like you. Here's the thing about information that was designed to be found. It was designed to be found. When you walk into a dealership armed with the invoice price, you feel prepared. You spent an hour on the internet, you found the number, you know what the dealer paid, and now you are going to negotiate from there. That feeling of preparation is exactly what the system is counting on. Derek understood this feeling well. He was a project manager in his late 30s, the kind of person who reads the fine print and does the research before any major purchase. When he decided to buy a new sedan, he did everything right. He looked up the manufacturer's suggested retail price. He found the invoice price on 2 separate websites. He walked in knowing the dealer's supposed cost was $31,400, and he was not going to pay $1 more than $31,450. The salesman pushed back. Of course he did. He told Derek they were already cutting it close, that there was barely any margin left, that this was essentially a favor. Derek held firm. They shook hands at $31,450. Derek walked out feeling like he had won. He had not won. He had just competed in the part of the game the dealer wanted him to focus on. Here is where it gets strange. The invoice price is not the dealer's cost. It never was. It is a number that exists specifically so that buyers have something to negotiate against, something that feels like a floor, something that makes the whole process feel fair. The actual cost the dealer paid for that car is significantly lower, and the gap between the two is filled by a system of payments and incentives that run completely parallel to the transaction you think you are having. This is what the industry calls front-end profit. It is the money built into the deal before you ever get to the finance office, before any extras are offered, before anyone mentions an extended warranty. It is already baked in, and it is structured so that even a deal that looks razor thin on the surface is still profitable underneath. The most reliable piece of this is something called dealer holdback. After a car is sold, the manufacturer sends the dealership a separate check. That check is calculated as a percentage of either the manufacturer's suggested retail price or the invoice price, depending on the brand, and it typically runs between 2 and 3%. On a $31,000 car, that is somewhere between $620 and $930, deposited into the dealership's account after the sale closes. Derek never saw it. It was never part of the negotiation. It was just there. So while Derek was celebrating a $50 victory over invoice, the dealership had already quietly collected more than 12 times that amount before he pulled out of the lot. And that is just the baseline. On top of holdback, manufacturers run what are called dealer cash incentives. These are direct payments to move specific models, usually the ones sitting on the lot too long, or the ones the manufacturer needs to clear before a new model year arrives. A dealer might receive an extra $1,500 or $2,000 per unit sold on a particular trim level, and you would never know it existed because it never appears anywhere in the negotiation. It is between the manufacturer and the dealer. You are not part of that conversation. Then there are volume bonuses. If a dealership sells enough units in a given month, they receive an additional payment from the manufacturer. The threshold varies, but the incentive is real, and it is significant. A dealer who is 4 cars away from hitting their monthly quota at the end of the month is operating with a completely different set of priorities than one who hit it 2 weeks ago. The price you get on the 30th of the month can be genuinely different from the price you would have gotten on the 15th, not because the car changed, but because the dealer's financial situation changed. There are also regional advertising fees built into the invoice price itself. The dealer pays them on paper, then recovers them through holdback. The number you see on the invoice is already adjusted to account for costs the dealer does not actually absorb. Now add all of that up on Derek's car. Conservative estimates put the holdback alone at roughly $700. Dealer cash on his model was running about $800 that quarter. Add a modest volume bonus allocation, and you are somewhere north of $2,000 in front-end profit on a deal Derek thought he had squeezed to $50 above cost. He did not negotiate the price down. He negotiated around a number that was built to absorb negotiation. Now, you might be thinking that the solution is just to research harder, find the real cost, account for holdback, calculate the incentives. And look, that instinct is not wrong. Knowing these numbers shifts the conversation. But here is the uncomfortable part. Even if you could somehow calculate every front-end profit down to the dollar, it would not tell you the whole story. Because front-end profit, as real as it is not where dealerships make their money. In 2025, the National Automobile Dealers Association reported that the average net profit a dealership earns on a new vehicle sale, after accounting for all front-end costs, is somewhere around $850. For a transaction that might total $40,000 or $50,000, that is a thin margin. It sounds like the dealers are barely scraping by on the car itself. They are not scraping by. They are just making their money somewhere else. That somewhere else is a room most buyers do not think much about until they are already sitting in it. After Derek shook hands on the price and felt the relief of the hard part being over, a salesperson walked him down a hallway and into a quieter office. The desk was tidier. The energy was different. Someone new introduced himself, handed Derek a bottle of water, and said they just needed to handle a few things before he could take the car home. Derek thought the negotiation was finished. It had not started yet. That office is called the Finance and Insurance Office, and understanding what actually happens inside it is where this whole picture finally comes into focus. Most people think the dealership makes its money on the car. That assumption is what the entire room is designed to protect. The Finance and Insurance Office looks like a formality. It feels like paperwork. You have already done the hard work. You negotiated. You held firm. You got the number you wanted. This part is just processing. Sign here, initial there, take the keys. That is exactly the impression the room is built to create, because the moment you believe the negotiation is over, you stop negotiating. Derek was sitting across from a man named Paul. Paul had a calm, unhurried manner and a desk with almost nothing on it. He offered Derek a bottle of water, made a comment about the color Derek had chosen, and then pulled up a screen with a clean summary of the deal. Paul's official title was Finance Manager. That title is accurate in the same way that a casino cashier is a mathematician. Technically true. Functionally misleading. Paul was the highest paid person in that dealership, not the general manager, not the salesperson who spent 40 minutes on the floor with Derek. Paul. His income was almost entirely commission-based, calculated as a percentage of the profit generated in that room. And he had been doing this long enough to know exactly how to read a buyer. He knew who would push back on the interest rate and who would not. He knew which products to lead with and which to save. He knew that Derek had just spent an hour negotiating and was mentally ready to be done. That exhaustion was useful. Here is the number that explains why this room exists. According to data from publicly traded dealership groups reported in 2025, the average finance and insurance profit per new vehicle transaction in the United States was approximately $2,900. Compare that to the roughly $850 the same dealership made on the car itself, and the picture becomes very clear. The car is not the product. The car is the reason you came in. The product is everything Paul is about to offer you. So, where does that $2,900 come from? It starts with the interest rate. When Paul presents you with a financing offer, the rate he shows you is almost never the rate the lender actually quoted. Dealers have what is called dealer reserve, which is the ability to mark up the interest rate above what the lender approved and keep the difference. A lender might approve you at 6.2%. Paul presents it at 7.9%. You sign. Over a 60-month loan on a $40,000 car, That 1.7% difference costs you roughly $2,100 in additional interest. Paul's office keeps a portion of that spread. You never see the original approval. Then come the add-on products. Extended warranties are the most common. The pitch sounds reasonable. The manufacturer's warranty only lasts 3 years. This one covers you for 7, and repairs are expensive. What Paul does not mention is that the dealership typically marks up the cost of that warranty by 40 to 80% above what the provider actually charges. A warranty that costs the dealer $800 gets presented to you at $1,300 or $1,400. The margin on that single product can exceed the margin on the entire car. Gap insurance is next. This covers the difference between what you owe on the loan and what the car is worth if it gets totaled. It is a legitimate product. The problem is that your existing auto insurance policy may already include it, and if it does not, you can usually add it through your insurer for a fraction of the dealership price. Paul is not going to mention either of those things. Then there are the documentation fees. In 2025, the average documentation fee charged by dealerships in the United States was approximately $518. This fee covers the cost of preparing your paperwork. The actual labor involved takes less than an hour. The fee is almost entirely profit, and in most states, it is completely unregulated, which means the dealership can set it at whatever number the market will accept. Tire and wheel protection, paint sealant, key replacement coverage, and nitrogen in the tires. Each one sounds minor. Each one carries a markup that would make a restaurant menu blush. Stacked together, they add up fast, and they are almost always presented as a package, which makes it harder to evaluate any single item clearly. Now here is the part worth sitting with. None of these products is necessarily bad. Some buyers genuinely benefit from an extended warranty. Gap insurance is real protection in the right situation. The issue is not the products themselves. The issue is that you are evaluating them at the worst possible moment, in a quiet room, after a long negotiation, presented by someone whose entire income depends on how much of this you agree to. That is not a fair environment for a financial decision. This is where Marcus's story becomes instructive. Marcus was a high school teacher in his early 40s who went in to buy a used SUV for his family. He had done his research on the price. He negotiated well on the front end and felt confident going into the finance office. 40 minutes later, he drove home, having agreed to an extended warranty, gap insurance, and a tire protection plan. He did not fully understand what he had bought. When he got home and added it up, those 3 items had added $2,600 to his loan. Spread over 60 months, the monthly impact felt small. The total impact was not small. Marcus is not unsophisticated. He just did not know what room he was in. And this brings us directly back to the cash buyer. When someone walks in and announces they are paying cash, the finance and insurance office loses most of its inventory. No loan means no rate markup, no dealer reserve, no interest spread to capture. The cash buyer can still be sold add-on products, but they are far more likely to decline them when there is no loan payment to fold everything into. The monthly payment structure is one of the most effective tools in that room because it converts a $2,000 product into $33 a month, which feels like nothing. Without a loan, without the payment frame, the finance office is working with one hand behind its back. So the dealership compensates by being less flexible on the price of the car itself. Travis told the dealer up front that he was paying cash. The dealer heard that he was about to lose the most profitable part of the transaction, so they protected it by holding firm on everything else. Travis paid $2,400 more for the same car Derek bought in the same week because he eliminated their back-end profit before the conversation even began. The good news is that once you understand how this system works, you can stop playing defense. There's a specific sequence, a playbook, that lets you use the dealership's own incentive structure to lower the price of the car. And it starts with a decision you make before you ever set foot on the lot. Knowing how a system works and knowing how to move inside it are 2 different things. This is the part where the second one actually matters. Everything covered so far has been about understanding the dealership's incentive structure. The front-end profits are hidden inside the invoice price. The finance and insurance office generating nearly 3 times the profit of the car itself. The cash buyer penalty that almost nobody sees coming. That knowledge is genuinely useful, but knowledge without a clear sequence to follow tends to evaporate the moment you are sitting across from someone like Paul, in a quiet room, after a long negotiation with a pen in your hand. So here is the sequence. It is not complicated. It requires discipline, not cleverness. The single most important decision you make happens before you leave the house. You are going in as a financing buyer. Not because you need financing, not because you cannot afford to pay cash. Because the dealership's entire pricing flexibility is tied to the assumption that they will recover their margin in the finance and insurance office. And you're going to let them believe that assumption is still in play for as long as the price negotiation is happening. This is not deception in any meaningful sense. You are not signing anything false. You are not making a promise you cannot keep. You are simply withholding one piece of information until it stops being useful to them and starts being useful to you. The dealership withholds information from you throughout the entire process. The invoice price, the holdback, the dealer cash incentives, and the lender's actual approval rate. None of that gets volunteered. You're just playing by the same rules. When you walk in, the conversation stays on the car. Not the monthly payment, not the financing terms, the price of the car. This distinction matters enormously. The monthly payment framing is one of the oldest tools in the room because it makes any number feel manageable. A $2,000 add-on becomes $33 a month over 60 months. A higher interest rate becomes a slightly rounder number at the bottom of a screen. When you negotiate the payment instead of the price, you lose the ability to know what you actually agreed to. Keep the conversation on one number, the out-the-door price. Research that number before you arrive. In 2026, tools like the manufacturer's website, third-party pricing platforms, and competing dealer quotes all give you a reasonable picture of what others are actually paying. Not the sticker price, not the invoice. What transactions are closing in your region for your specific model and trim? That is your reference point. Come in below it and negotiate up from there, not down from the sticker. When the salesperson asks how you plan to finance, you tell them you're open to financing through the dealership. That is true. You're open to it. You just also happen to have other options. That answer keeps the back-end profit expectation alive without committing you to anything. If they press, you say you want to sort out the price first before talking about financing. That is also a completely reasonable position. It is the correct order of operations anyway. Negotiate the price of the car until you are satisfied with it. Use competing quotes if you have them. Take your time. Be willing to walk out and come back. The end-of-month dynamic discussed earlier is real. A salesperson who is close to a volume threshold has different flexibility than one who is comfortably past it. Patience is an asset in this room in a way that urgency never is. Once the price is agreed and you move into the finance and insurance office, the dynamic shifts. Now you are evaluating products. This is where you need to slow down deliberately, because the pace of that room is designed to carry you forward without stopping. Paul, or whoever is sitting across from you, will present things in a sequence and at a speed that discourages line-by-line scrutiny. Disrupt that pace. Ask for the cost of each product individually. Ask what it covers specifically. Ask whether your existing insurance already includes it. On the interest rate, ask directly what rate the lender approved before Paul tells you what rate he is offering. Most buyers never ask this question. Many finance managers will not answer it directly, but asking it signals that you know the markup exists, and that signal alone sometimes changes what gets offered. Decline what you do not need. The extended warranty deserves a genuine look, particularly on models with known reliability issues, or if you plan to keep the car well past the manufacturer's coverage period, but evaluate it as a standalone financial decision, not as a monthly payment add-on. If you want it, negotiate the price of it. The warranty price is negotiable. Almost nobody negotiates it. Now comes the part that makes the whole strategy work. After you have signed the purchase agreement, taken the keys, and driven home, you pay off the loan. Not over 60 months, not over 12. In the first week, ideally within the first 30 days, one payment, the balance in full. You will owe a small amount of interest for the days the loan was open, typically somewhere between $15 and $40, depending on the loan size and rate. That is the entire cost of the financing strategy. $15 to $40 in exchange for the negotiating position of a financing buyer throughout the entire transaction. Think about what that trade actually looks like. Marcus, the teacher from the previous example, paid $2,600 in add-ons he did not fully evaluate. Travis paid $2,400 more for the same car as his neighbor because he announced his cash position too early. The The cost of not using this strategy, in both cases, ran into the thousands. The cost of using it is closer to $30 in interest. But the strategy has two conditions that are genuinely non-negotiable. If either one is missing, the approach does not work, and you do not proceed. The first is the loan origination fee. Some lenders charge a flat fee, sometimes $300 to $500 simply for opening the loan. If that fee exists, paying it off in the first week does not make sense. You need to ask about origination fees before you sign anything. Ask explicitly. Get a clear answer. Most standard dealership auto loans in the United States do not carry origination fees, but you cannot assume. Asking the question also signals competence, which shifts the tone of the conversation in your favor. The second condition is the prepayment penalty. This is a clause in some loan contracts that charges you a fee for paying off the balance early. It exists specifically to protect the lender's expected interest income. Read the contract yourself, not a summary, the actual document. Look for the words prepayment penalty, early payoff fee, or any language about minimum interest charges. If that clause is in the contract, the strategy collapses. You are no longer paying $30 in interest. You are paying a penalty that could run into hundreds of dollars. In that case, you walk away from the financing offer entirely, disclose that you are paying cash, and negotiate from there, knowing the dealer has less room than they are showing. If both conditions are clear, no origination fee and no prepayment penalty, the sequence works exactly as described. You got the pricing flexibility of a financing buyer. You paid the interest cost of a cash buyer. The difference between those two positions is where you keep the money. One last thing worth saying. This strategy works because the dealership's business model depends on compartmentalizing the transaction. The sales floor does not know what happens in the finance office. The finance office does not know every detail of what was agreed on the floor. That separation is what makes the system profitable for them. Understanding the whole picture before you walk in is what makes it profitable for you. And the picture that matters most, the one that determines how flexible the dealer is willing to be on every number in the room, starts with one decision made before you ever arrive. Whether to walk in as a financing buyer or announce upfront that you are paying cash is not just a preference. It is the opening move in a game that has already started. That conclusion brings everything full circle. And in the conclusion, we will pull back from the mechanics and look at the bigger pattern this reveals, not just about car dealerships, but about how profit systems in general are designed to make the most expensive moment feel like the least important one. Here's the realization that ties all of this together. The dealership never hid the game. The finance office is a real room with a real door. The holdback is a documented payment. The rate markup is a legal practice. None of it was secret. It was just structured so that the most important information arrived after the most important decisions felt finished. That is the pattern worth carrying forward. When a system separates the moment you feel like you've won from the moment the real money moves, pay attention to the gap between those two moments. That gap is where the margin lives. A few things to watch for going forward. The invoice price is a negotiating prop, not a cost. The finance office generates more profit than the car. Monthly payment framing converts large numbers into invisible ones. And the timing of when you reveal your payment method determines how much flexibility you ever see. Before your next major purchase, ask yourself which room you have not been shown yet. Every transaction has one. If this changed how you think about the way these systems are built, there is a related question worth sitting with. Car dealerships are one example, but the same structure, separating the decision from the cost, shows up in more places than most people expect.